What's up, guys? Welcome back to this episode of the Road to Redemption podcast. I'm, as always, your host, Cam Williamson. Good to be back with you guys. I hope you enjoy our new setting, some of which you can see. I got a plant, right? I got a plant in my house. I have quite a few house plants now. I got house plants. I bought a bird feeder. I've been watching a bunch of songs. I specifically bought seeds that attract songbirds. I love cardinals. I'm from Ohio. It's a state bird. And we have tons of cardinals here where I live in Tennessee. Full disclosure, I've seen way more cardinals here than I did in Ohio. That's just a fact. What's up? What the heck is going on? Dude, today's podcast is going to be a little heavy. It's going to be a little heavy, right? It's the Road to Redemption podcast. We talk about mental health. We talk challenges. We talk about overcoming the challenges. It's okay. A little heavy is not a problem, right? It needs to be talked about, right? Mental health is not only cool. I guess last month was Mental Health Awareness Month, and this month is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and you would think I would be stoked about that, but here's the real fact of things. Mental health is being sold as like an item, as a product now. You can, everybody everywhere is talking about mental health. And I saw something pretty great on Instagram where somebody said, yeah, we talk about mental health as people being uncomfortable going to a local coffee shop or interacting with people they haven't seen in a while. But what about suicidal thoughts? What about the things that actually cause people to get in these, episodes in life? And me recently coming out of one, I want to share one of the key things that I think keeps people in severely depressed states and really locked in unhealthy mental health states. So it's catastrophizing or catastrophism, making a catastrophe out of your life when it's not necessary, right? However you want to say that. And I can tell you from experience, to catastrophize, and I don't know what the proper way to say that is, but to make everything in your mind a catastrophe or a big deal or an emergency or on the verge of an emergency, that is a thing that doesn't start one day. It's a pattern that we learn over time. One thought leads to another, and then we explore that thought, and then we allow that thought to build and grow. We give it more attention, and therefore it becomes obsessive and unmanageable, right? I've had to find in a lot of my digging that in your upbringing, if you're taught a lot of things like, well, that's not meant for us, well, hey, life isn't fair, no one told you life was going to be easy, nobody's going to give you nothing, nobody really cares, all this kind of, I hate to keep using the word, but like catastrophe type thinking, doom and gloomsday all the time, every single day. Being around that, like if you were raised by people that talk like that and feel like there's some kind of ceiling to life because the world is just out to get them, well, that's a pretty solid recipe for somebody who's going to try to catastrophize their life. And unfortunately, it doesn't just happen in the little small, minute things in our life. It happens in everyday big actions. Like for me, it became very difficult for me to leave my house because every time I would go to leave my house, I would start thinking like, what if I had a heart attack? What if I have a stroke? What if I have this? What if I have that? And it's like, I don't want to be out in public when I fall dead. I would rather be by myself. And it's like, I should have cut that thought off at what if I have X, Y, and Z? Because I'm a healthy 29-year-old guy. It doesn't make sense to worry about something like that. I eat okay, not great, but I eat okay. I'm active, like I'm good. But something in my brain, my whole life has always told me I'm sick or I'm on the verge of catching like a life-threatening illness, and I don't know why. I think it's like I've talked about it before. When I was young, I had scarlet fever when I was a kid, and that time in the hospital I think must have been pretty traumatic because I don't have any memories from it. I was only like 2 years old, so I don't expect to. But for whatever reason, and my mom was very protective of me, so that's another thing. Oh, watch out, be careful, and I'm like that with my kids. So I see it. I see where it comes from, the constant caution and probably over worrying about shit. And that's pretty much what anxiety is. So then you mix a thought pattern that becomes normal of just everything's bad, everybody's out to get me, life is going to be a struggle all the time because that's just life is suffering, right? That's a big one. And you at some point, I had to find medication to realize this, but now that I feel that I'm more balanced and I'm able to actually take the thoughts that come into my head and go, oh, that doesn't serve me in any way. Like, there's no reason I need to think about that. And in the same way, I was able to take any situation, like a simple sensation in my body, and go, oh, well, that's probably, the disease I've been waiting on or whatever. Now I can do that. I can feel a sensation somewhere in my body and go, yeah, I'm a human being. I'm alive. I have cells constantly growing and shifting and changing. Yeah, you're going to feel some stuff. And it's just, I think the key that I'm learning with most mental health struggles is you have to learn that in the end, right, all we're really worried about is our survival. You're worried about, am I going to make it through this? Whatever this is, this day, this anxiety attack, this depressive episode, this low financial point in life, or whatever your situation is, this job that I hate, am I going to make it through the newborn stages of, parenting, whatever. There's a lot of situations that can bring people severely low. And you have to realize in that moment, like, my life could end at any point, and I have no control over that, whether it's a medical reason or other. Memento mori, you will die. That's a fact. We will. So sitting around worrying about it is not even something practical because you're not going to be told when it's going to happen. So sitting around trying to prepare for it or like, oh, if I'm ready, maybe I can stop it. It's completely unreasonable. And that's just with physical catastrophe type thinking. I think catastrophe type thinking is the way I like to say that. Thank God, 10 minutes in the episode, we figured it out. It just, yeah, you want to watch for that because when you feel like your survival is at risk for whatever reason, like for me, I fell into a severe state of like over hypochondria. I could not get the thought out of my head that I was going to have some kind of disease that was going to take me out, but I didn't realize that it was because I was actually processing the loss of my grandfather. That's how I had to do it. Like, that was the patriarch of my family. That was my male role model coming up, and he died. Right? So when something like that happens, I always thought when I was younger, like, well, when people that I love die, I think I'll be okay. I think I'll be able to handle that. I don't think I'm going to break down like you see in the movies. And once again, I compare everything in life to the movies, which is stupid. But when I lost my grandfather, I remember getting the call and I was like, yeah, okay. He was going through a lot. He was in a lot of pain and stuff. It was time. And then I remember just, that realization that I would never see him again fell in. And I was like, man, holy shit. Like, I'm never going to see my grandfather again. That's crazy. A man that means so much to me. We're never going to share each other's presence ever again. And I bawled crying just out of sadness, out of that sheer fact that I wouldn't see him again. But the next instant thought, and this is so selfish, but it's like, well, if this can happen to him, that means it could for sure happen to me. Like, he was so strong. He was, the father to, 4 kids and grandkids. He was a great grandfather, and, the man worked his ass off his whole life, and god damn, like, just, if it could happen to a guy like that, it could for sure happen to me. And then I just didn't let that go. I couldn't. for some reason. And I remember sitting on the back porch one night, and it was dark, and a cardinal flew up. As I told you guys, I like my birds now. A cardinal flew up, and for whatever reason, I tried to put meaning to it. It was like, oh, this is my grandfather coming to visit me. It's a cardinal. I'm from Ohio. It's my grandfather. And I remember looking at this bird, and it just flew away. Like, as soon as I had that thought, and I'm like, fuck, man. And I remember thinking, like, good or bad, right? Putting your life's emotions, your life's feelings, your life's circumstances on inanimate objects and birds and animals or whatever, to be like, well, if this happens, then, that means it was meant to be. Or, oh, that must be this person coming to visit me. I think sometimes we can take solace in that, but at the same time, I think it could be detrimental because you're just kind of denying what you know to be true, which is that person is gone, We can't take peace in the fact that they are at peace and then think that they're also here hanging out in limbo for some reason. And if you're a deep thinker or more than a three-dimensional thinker, I guess you got to consider stuff like that in life. Like, I'm not saying that when we leave here, it's the end and the lights go out and you as, your spirit or whatever is gone. But I think we have to be willing. And I think this is why a lot of people hold on to like ghost stories and the paranormal, and like people want to talk about UFOs so much right now. It's because the world is so scary. People want to believe that there's somewhere else we could go. Like, they want to believe that aliens are real because that's the possibility that life can actually survive somewhere else. And maybe if we can get there, we can find infinite life. And oh my gosh, that would solve all of our problems. But would it? Or would you just live an infinite life of people you lost and, living in all the indulgences of life, but never having to know how fragile it truly is? I think you can sit around and you can worry about everything that's going on around you, or all the things that could happen because studies say that this, that, and the other. You can absolutely do that, and there's plenty of reasons why you could. But one thing I've learned in the last 6 months is this life is extremely short. It's extremely short. And a single moment wasted worrying about the future or the past, it's just not a life worth living. I mean, it's not, because you're only suffering something that's not there. It's not present in your reality, right? It would be like preparing to fight someone that you are never going to fight. When we dig up our past, and when I say we dig up, some people take that like, I didn't choose this. I, of all people, can understand that. I didn't choose this. I didn't choose to feel this way. I didn't choose to feel this strongly. No, you're right, you didn't. But when that switch is flipped, and that thought comes into our head of whatever your negative stronghold is, and you choose to then go, yep, and this is why, and then you start to make excuses for the way you're going to continue to live your life instead of try to have a say in the battle. That's one thing that I think is super important about mental health. If we're going to bring awareness to anything, it needs to be that these are mental health battles. These are mental health wars. Every day you're going to war with an old way of thinking, an old way of being, an old way of talking to yourself. Sometimes you've done that for 25 years, That's not something that's always going to stop in a week, in a month, in a year. It takes time. But just like anything else, think of it how you need to, but every time a negative thought comes up, shoot it out of the sky. I mean, if you really need to think about it like a war, that's an enemy trying to drop a bomb on your head. Shoot that bitch out of the sky. Be proactive instead of being reactive and trying to respond to something that has an emotional stronghold over you. That's why addiction is so big, and that's why suicide is such an option for people, because they go, I'm this way now, I've been this way as long as I can remember, that means I'm always going to be this way, and this life is not something I choose to continue living. And people lose hope. But we don't lose hope around here. It's the Road to Redemption podcast. It's the Shatter It movement. I hope you guys know how much I love you. I genuinely care about you. We had a few questions come in for the podcast. I didn't get a chance to answer them in the last episode. Somebody asked, what keeps you driven when you get low, you get down? What keeps me driven? It's an obvious answer, is my kids. As a father, you literally cannot give up. You have to keep going for your family. But at the same time, I know it may sound cheesy, but I have this fantastic dream in my head. From the time I was a young kid, I always knew that somehow my job would be entertaining, that I would be an entertainer somehow. And when I was real young, and my mom started going to church sometime when I was like 12, she told me a story, and she goes, Cam, I had a vision that you were standing on a stage and you were telling your life story to a room full of thousands of people. She's like, and I don't know why, but I feel like that's your call. I feel like that's where you're going. And I was so young, I just was like, oh, that's cool. Maybe I'll be on a stage, maybe I'll be a rock star. That's awesome. And my whole life, that feeling of wanting to be in front of the camera and tell my story and talk about life, that's always been there. And that dream that that vision that my mother had, I've told my story on stages a couple times over, not in front of a room full of thousands of people, but that dream and that vision and that feeling, that's what keeps me going. On top of my family, for sure. Somebody asked, my buddy Thomas, who skates with me all the time, asked, when's the skate video part coming? When we're good enough to have tricks that would warrant a skate part, I guess. Other than that, people ask, how's the family? Family's good. Baby girl broke her arm. Not my youngest, my oldest broke her arm. Completely broke it like this. Like broke it, snapped it clean. It just clean snap. And I was amazed, man. When I talked to her on the phone, I said, how you feeling? She was like, I'm okay. She was being a champ about it, acting like it didn't even nothing. And then, unfortunately, she got a cast on, and I guess that gave her a little too much confidence, and she went doing a little too much, maybe jolting around too much, and she messed it up. So the arm wasn't setting right, so they had to go back in, reset it. It's bad, but now she's good. It's all good. I'm supposed to see her this weekend. Hopefully I do. They've been trying to bail a couple times already, so hopefully we actually get her in the house. The baby's good. She's growing every day. Love being around her. The wife's good. She's beautiful as ever. Started a new job. And, she's crushing it, doing her thing. Lead opposition style. All right, guys. I'm going to wrap it up. Please, if you made it this far especially, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to this video wherever I decide to put that little thing. And then, you can hit the bell if you really like it, and you'll get notified anytime I upload stuff. All right, guys. I'm out of here. Love you.